The first doctor touched Sorelia Voss with 3 layers of protective gloves, 2 magnetic restraints, and the full confidence of a species that had never been wrong about medicine before. He lasted less than 1 second. Not because she attacked him. That would have been easier to understand. The warrior did not move, did not wake, did not even open her eyes. Her body simply rejected contact like a star rejecting darkness, and Dr. Thalen was lifted off his feet and thrown backward into the observation barrier with a sound that made every medic in the room stop breathing. I was standing 12 feet away when it happened, close enough to see his instruments scatter across the white floor, close enough to watch the warning lights flash from amber to red, close enough to realize that the most dangerous patient in the medical wing was unconscious. That was the part no one wanted to say out loud. Sorelia Voss, Blade of the 7th Fleet, breaker of siege lines, the woman who had once walked alone through a collapsing cruiser and carried out 37 survivors, was lying still on a trauma table, and somehow she was still winning. The room around her had been built for disasters. 6-inch reinforced glass, pressure-sealed doors, ceiling-mounted stabilizers, emergency foam vents, enough scanners to read the heartbeat of a creature through a steel wall. None of it mattered. The moment anyone crossed the yellow line around her bed, every machine began screaming as if the room itself had developed survival instincts. We had already tried remote scanners. They'd burn out. We tried drone-assisted examination. The drones dropped from the air like dead insects. We tried sedation mist. Her nervous system broke it down before it reached her lungs. By the time Dr. Thalen hit the barrier, no one was laughing anymore, but we had been earlier. I will admit that. We had laughed when Central Command told us they were sending a human medic. A human. From Earth. 5'11", maybe 180 pounds, no natural armor, no secondary heart, no thermal shielding, no neural dampening organs, no useful claws, no venom, no built-in defensive field. Just skin, bones, soft eyes, and an absurd reputation for surviving situations that should have ended them. His name was Ethan Walker, and when he arrived outside Isolation Room 3, he did not look heroic. That irritated me more than arrogance would have. Arrogance, I understood. Warriors had it. Surgeons had it. Politicians practically breathed it. But Ethan Walker looked tired. Calm, yes, but tired in the way emergency workers get tired, as if panic was something he had misplaced years ago and never bothered to find again. He carried a black medical bag in one hand and a paper cup of coffee in the other. Paper. In a sterile military trauma wing. I remember staring at it because it seemed impossible that anyone could bring something so ordinary into a room where the floor still vibrated from Sorelia's last involuntary pulse. Commander Varesh stood beside me, all silver armor and clenched jaw, watching the human through narrowed eyes. "That is the specialist?" he asked. No one answered him, because the answer sounded ridiculous even to the translation system. Ethan stepped up to the glass and looked inside. He did not ask how strong she was. He did not ask how many people she had injured by accident. He did not ask for her rank, her combat record, or the estimated range of the energy field surrounding her body. He watched her chest rise once, then fall too fast. He watched her fingers curl against the sheet. He watched the muscles in her throat tighten like she was trying to swallow a scream she did not have the strength to release. Then the human medic said the first intelligent thing anyone had said all day. "She's not fighting you." I turned toward him before I could stop myself. "Excuse me?" Ethan kept his eyes on Sorelia. "She's scared." That was when the room went quiet in a different way. Not medical quiet. Not professional quiet. Insulted quiet. Because Sorelia Voss was many things. Decorated. Dangerous. Brilliant. Beautiful in that sharp, untouchable way her species seemed to carve into their warriors from birth. But scared? No. We did not use that word for someone like her. We used unstable. Overloaded. Neurologically reactive. Combat locked. We hid fear inside clinical language because it made us feel in control. The human did not. He just stood there with his coffee going cold in his hand, looking at the most untouchable warrior in the galaxy like she was not a weapon, not a threat, not a miracle of battlefield biology gone wrong, but a patient. And that, more than anything else, made every alien in the room uncomfortable. The silence after Ethan Walker said the words scared lasted longer than any alarm in the room. I watched Commander Varesh turn his head slowly, the way soldiers do when deciding whether a statement is foolish, insulting, or dangerous. Around us, the senior physicians shifted in their sealed suits, their faceplates reflecting Ceralia's still body on the trauma table. No one wanted to agree with the human. No one wanted to be the first to admit that our entire diagnosis might have been built on pride. "She is a Varathi war champion," Dr. Merrick said, his voice clipped and cold through the speaker mesh. "Her nervous system was engineered by evolution for battle stress. Fear does not explain this level of defensive discharge." Ethan finally looked away from the glass. "It explains the timing." That annoyed me. Not because it was wrong, but because he said it like the answer had been sitting in front of us, waiting for someone to stop worshipping the problem. He set his coffee on the nearest counter, opened his black bag, and pulled out a small flashlight, a roll of soft medical tape, and an old-fashioned stethoscope. I nearly laughed again. I wish I had not. There are moments in history that punish you for every smug thought you have before them. This was one of those moments. "You brought primitive acoustic equipment into a military trauma wing?" Merrick asked. Ethan glanced at the stethoscope. "It does not crash when the room gets emotional." Several of the nurses looked away. I heard one of them make a sound that might have been a laugh, quickly swallowed. Commander Varesh did not laugh. His eyes stayed on Ethan. "Human, do you understand who she is?" Ethan nodded once. "Patient female, approximately 6 feet 2 inches, elevated heart rate, shallow breathing, involuntary defensive response, likely. Sensory overload, possible pain loop, possible memory trigger." Varesh's jaw tightened. "That is not what I meant." "I know," Ethan said. "That is the problem." Nobody spoke after that. Even the machines seemed to lower their volume, as if curious. Through the glass, Ceralia Voss looked impossible. Her skin held a faint silver-blue undertone beneath the trauma lights, and thin luminous markings ran along her arms like quiet lightning trapped under glass. Her hair, pale as moonlit steel, spilled across the pillow in careful medical disorder. She was beautiful, yes, but not in the soft decorative way humans painted on posters or alien courts carved into statues. She looked like something designed by a dangerous universe that had gotten carried away. Every line of her was controlled strength, even unconscious. Every breath seemed negotiated. Every twitch of her fingers made the sensors tremble. To the fleet, she was a symbol. To enemy commanders, she was a warning. To the young cadets who watched recruitment feeds, she was proof that courage could have a face. And to every person in that medical wing, she was the one patient we were afraid to touch. Ethan studied her for another 10 seconds, maybe less, and somehow made it feel like an examination deeper than all our scans. "How long has she been like this?" he asked. "For hours," I answered before Merrick could stop me. She was recovered from the outer hull of the evacuation vessel. Conscious for the first 9 minutes. Nonverbal. Responsive to light. Then the field expanded, and we had to isolate her. Ethan's expression changed slightly. Not fear. Recognition. That was worse. "She was alone when you found her?" I checked the report on my tablet, though I already knew. "Yes." Ethan nodded, almost to himself. "That tracks." Merrick stepped forward. "What tracks?" The human picked up the soft medical tape and tore off a strip with his teeth, calm as a man fixing a bandage at a school football game instead of standing outside the most restricted room on the station. "You keep treating the field like a weapon," he said. "It is not. It is a locked door." Varesh's voice dropped. "And you believe you can open it?" Ethan looked through the glass at Ceralia, at the warrior no one could approach, at the living storm we had mistaken for a fortress. "No," he said quietly. I think she has been holding it shut from the inside. The idea that Aurelia Voss was holding the field shut from the inside should have sounded absurd. Instead, it made the entire room look back at the monitors with new discomfort. Her energy readings were not expanding in clean waves like an attack pattern. They were pulsing unevenly, tightening, releasing, tightening again. Like a fist. Like a hand refusing to let go. Dr. Merrickx hated that observation immediately, which meant he had noticed it too. Speculation, he said. Emotional language dressed as medicine. Ethan did not argue. That was becoming the most irritating thing about him. He did not defend his pride because he did not seem to bring any into the room. He simply reached for one of our diagnostic tablets, turned it around, and tapped 3 points on the scan where Aurelia's neural output spiked every 17 seconds. Here. Here. And here. Same interval. Same trigger. External sound. I looked at the room's speakers. So did everyone else. The station alarm had been cycling at low volume since she arrived, a soft repeating tone meant to warn staff away from the isolation zone. Necessary, standard, harmless. At least, that was what we had believed. Ethan looked at me. Can you turn that off? Merrick snapped before I could move. Absolutely not. That alarm exists so no one forgets what she is. Ethan's eyes stayed calm. Maybe that is why she cannot wake up. The insult landed softly, which somehow made it worse. Commander Varesh took one step closer to the glass. His reflection overlaps Aurelia's face, soldier over soldier, armor over patient. Explain. Ethan pointed at the monitor. She was recovered alone, outside a damaged evacuation vessel, surrounded by emergency alerts, pressure warnings, and people shouting through comms. Now she is waking up inside another sealed room, hearing another warning tone, surrounded by strangers in armor who will not come close. Her body does not know she is safe. It thinks the disaster is still happening. That was the first time I saw Varesh lose a fraction of his certainty. Not much. Just enough. Enough for his hands to loosen at his sides. Enough for his voice to drop when he asked, "And Earth medicine teaches this?" Ethan gave a small shrug. Earth teaches a lot of things it should not have to. Nobody laughed. Not this time. There was something inside that sentence none of our translators could fully carry, a weight that belonged to storms, highways, hospitals at 3 a.m, and ordinary people doing impossible work because someone had to. I muted the alarm before Merrickx could stop me. The room changed instantly. Not dramatically. No miracle. No cinematic flash. Just quiet. Real quiet. Aurelia's pulse, which had been hammering at 140 beats per minute, dropped to 132. Then 126. The field around her bed dimmed by 3%. 3% should not have felt like history. It did. Ethan nodded once. Good. Lower the lights by half. Merrickx turned on me. Do not. Commander Varesh said. Do it. I lowered the lights. The harsh white glare softened into a dim blue wash, and the luminous markings along Aurelia's arms stopped flickering so violently. Her fingers uncurled by less than an inch. Less than an inch, and every senior physician in the room leaned forward as if watching a planet change orbit. Ethan stepped closer to the yellow line. Next, I need everyone except essential staff to stop staring at her. That finally broke Merrickx's patience. You cannot possibly believe observation is harming her. Ethan looked at the 15 armored guards, 9 physicians, 12 nurses, and 3 command officers packed behind the glass. Doctor, where I come from, waking up surrounded by a crowd is not calming. It was such a simple sentence that it embarrassed us. We were advanced enough to rebuild organs in a tank. We could restart a failed circulatory system with a beam of coherent light. We could map pain signals in 4 dimensions. And somehow, it had taken a human with a paper coffee cup to remind us that a frightened patient might not enjoy being watched like a weapon test. Varesh ordered the room cleared. People protested. Quietly, because they were still afraid of him. Then they obeyed. Within 2 minutes, Only 5 of us remained: Varesh, Merrick's, 2 nurses, and me. Ethan waited until the door sealed behind the last guard. Then he removed his outer jacket and rolled up his sleeves. Merrick stared at him as though he had started speaking to gravity. "What are you doing?" Ethan picked up the stethoscope, the ridiculous primitive tool we had mocked minutes earlier, and checked the earpieces with his thumb. "My job." Ceralia's field pulsed again, softer this time, but still strong enough to rattle the instrument trays. Ethan did not flinch. He stepped to the yellow line, looked at the warning symbol on the floor, and paused just long enough to read it. Then he crossed it. The moment Ethan crossed the yellow line, every monitor in Isolation Room 3 reacted like he had stepped off a cliff. The cardiac display jumped. The neural map brightened. The defensive field around Ceralia's bed expanded 6 inches, then stopped, hovering in the air like an invisible animal deciding whether to bite. I expected Ethan to freeze. Everyone expected that. Even Commander Varesh, who had ordered the room cleared, shifted his weight like he was preparing to drag the human back if this went wrong. Ethan did not freeze. He held both hands slightly away from his sides, palms open, shoulders relaxed, chin lowered just enough to make himself smaller. That detail struck me harder than it should have. Most species made themselves larger when approaching danger. Armor widened. Crests lifted. Frills opened. Claws displayed. Ethan Walker did the opposite. He became less threatening on purpose. "Ceralia," he said, not loudly, not commandingly, just enough for the microphone above the bed to carry his voice. "My name is Ethan Walker. I am a medic. You are in a medical room aboard Station Halcyon. You are not outside anymore." Her fingers tightened against the sheet. The field flickered blue-white, and one of the overhead lights blinked out with a soft pop. Dr. Merrick's inhaled sharply. "Human, step back." Ethan ignored him. Not dramatically. Not rudely. He ignored him the way a person ignores rain while trying to change a tire on the side of a highway. "You are hearing machines," Ethan continued. "They are loud. They are annoying. But they are not warnings. Nobody is firing on you. Nobody is calling for evacuation. You are inside. You are breathing. You are safe enough for now." Safe enough. I noticed the wording. Not safe. Not everything is fine. Humans had an odd relationship with comfort. They did not always offer perfect lies. Sometimes they offered smaller truths strong enough to stand on. Ceralia's breathing hitched. The room held still. Ethan took one step closer. The air between him and the bed shimmered, bending the outline of his face. His skin flushed slightly from the pressure change, but he kept moving. One slow step. Then another. His left hand lowered toward the rail of the trauma bed, but he did not touch it. "Permission to approach," he said. Merrick's made a strangled sound. "She is unconscious." Ethan did not look back. "Then I will ask anyway." I wanted to call it foolish. I wanted to call it primitive ritual behavior, one of those human customs with more sentiment than function. But Ceralia's pulse dropped again. 118. 112. The field pulled inward by 2 inches. Commander Varesh saw it too. His expression changed from suspicion to something colder and more unsettled. He was watching a human do with courtesy what our machines could not do with force. Ethan stopped 3 feet from the table. That was farther than any of us had gotten since her arrival. 3 feet from Ceralia Voss, and he looked more concerned about frightening her than surviving her. "I am going to check your breathing," he said. "I will not restrain you. I will not hold you down. I will not let them crowd you again." That last sentence landed on all of us. Even Merrick's looked away. The field pulsed once, a low-pressure wave that trembled through the floor and rattled the glass behind us. One of the nurses whispered a prayer under her breath. Ethan only exhaled slowly, as if teaching the room how to do it with him. In through the nose. Out through the mouth. Slow. Ordinary. Human. Ceralia's chest followed half a beat later. Almost missed it. Then it happened again. Ethan breathed in. Sorelia breathed in. Ethan breathed out. Sorelia breathed out. The most feared warrior in 3 sectors was matching the rhythm of a man we had laughed at for carrying a paper cup. For the first time since she had been brought in, the danger field no longer looked like a storm. It looked like a locked door with someone listening on the other side. Ethan lifted the stethoscope and warmed the metal chest piece between his palms. Such a small gesture. Such an unnecessary gesture, I thought. Then I realized he was not doing it for the machine. He was doing it so the first touch would not be cold. That was when my stomach tightened. Because all our technology had treated Sorelia like a crisis to be contained. Ethan Walker was treating her like someone who might remember kindness even while trapped inside fear. He stepped closer, close enough now that the shimmer bent around his shoulders. The warning display above the door flashed black for half a second, then red again, as if even the system could not decide how doomed he was. Merrick's whispered, "This is impossible." Commander Varesh answered without taking his eyes off the human. "No. This is Earth." Ethan raised one hand over Sorelia's wrist, still not touching, waiting for a permission she could not speak. Her fingers opened. Just slightly. Just enough. And the entire medical wing watched the impossible become patient. Ethan's fingers hovered less than an inch above Sorelia's wrist, and the entire room forgot how to move. I could hear the soft hum of the stabilizers behind the walls, the distant pulse of the station's engines, the faint click of Dr. Merrick's claws tightening around his tablet. Every sensor told us the human should have already stepped back. Every instinct told us that being this close to Sorelia Voss was not bravery, but a misunderstanding of mortality. Ethan seemed to understand perfectly. That was the strange part. He did not rush the moment. He did not grab her wrist like a conquering hero proving a point. He waited. His hands stayed open, steady, patient, offering contact instead of taking it. "You are doing good," he said. Softly. "I know it does not feel like that. But you are." Sorelia's eyelids moved. Barely. A tremor passed through the light markings along her arm, and the field tightened so quickly that the monitor emitted a single warning tone before I muted it with a shaking hand. Ethan's eyes flicked toward me. "Thank you?" 2 words. Calm, polite, impossible. He was standing inside a danger zone with a warrior whose unconscious reflexes had overwhelmed half our medical wing, and he still found time to thank the person turning off a noise. Humans were exhausting. Ethan lowered his fingers the final inch. Skin met skin. Nothing exploded. No barrier shattered. No alarm screamed. No invisible force threw him across the room. His fingertips rested lightly on the inside of Sorelia's wrist, where her pulse beat too fast beneath silver-blue skin. The silence that followed was so complete it felt manufactured. Dr. Merrick leaned forward, mouth slightly open. Commander Varesh stopped breathing for 2 full seconds. One nurse covered her own faceplate with both hands. I looked at the monitor because I did not trust my eyes. Sorelia's pulse dropped from 108 to 101. Then 96. Then 92. Her neural output, which had looked like a battlefield from orbit, began to form a pattern. Not calm. Not safe. But organized. Ethan closed his eyes for a moment, listening with his fingers the way another doctor might listen with a scanner. "There you are," he whispered. That was when Sorelia opened her eyes. Not all at once. Slowly. Like waking was a decision she did not fully trust. Her eyes were pale violet, brighter than the ceiling lights, and for one terrifying second they focused on nothing at all. Then they found Ethan. The field surged. The bed restraints flashed. The floor sensors screamed silent data across my tablet. Ethan did not pull away. He leaned slightly closer, still keeping his grip gentle, still giving her room to choose. "Hi," he said. Just that. Hi. Not warrior. Not commander. Not blade of the 7th Fleet. Not asset. Not threat. Hi. Sorelia's lips parted, but no sound came out. Her gaze moved from Ethan to the glass, to Varesh, to Merrick's, to the ceiling, and panic began to climb across every monitor in the room. Ethan saw it before the machines did. "Look at me," he said, still quiet. "Not them. Me." Her eyes snapped back to him. The field held. "You are on Station Halcyon. You are in a medical room. You were recovered alive. You are not on the hull anymore." The word hull changed everything. Ceralia's hand tightened around his fingers so fast that I nearly shouted. Ethan's face tensed, but he did not complain. He simply adjusted his hand, giving her something solid to hold without making it a restraint. "That is it," he said. "I have got you," Dr. Merrick's whispered. "Her grip strength could break alloy." Ethan heard him. Of course he heard him. He did not look away from Ceralia. "Then stop talking about her like she is not in the room." Merrick's went silent. I had seen admirals fail to silence him with rank. The human did it with one sentence. Ceralia's breathing hitched again, and this time Ethan breathed with her deliberately, slow enough for her to follow. "In for 4, he said. "Hold for 2. Out for 6. Easy." I almost objected. Varathi lungs did not use human breathing cycles. Then Ceralia followed him anyway. Not perfectly. Not smoothly. But enough. The field shrank another foot. The glass stopped vibrating. The light steadied. For the first time in 4 hours, Isolation Room 3 felt less like a containment chamber, and more like a hospital room. Ethan finally placed the warm stethoscope near her upper chest, careful, professional, respectful. He listened for 3 beats, moved it half an inch, listened again. Then he looked toward me. "I need warm saline, a low-stimulus blanket, and everyone to keep their voices below conversation level." Merrick's blinked. "That is your treatment plan?" Ethan gave him a tired look. "No. That is how we stop making her worse before the treatment starts." Ceralia was still holding his hand. The most feared warrior in the fleet, the untouchable patient, the living storm, was holding on to a human medic like he was the only safe thing left in the universe. And none of us laughed now. The warm saline arrived in a sealed pouch, carried by a nurse, who moved as if the floor might object to her footsteps. Ethan did not take his eyes off Ceralia when he accepted it. That small detail stayed with me. He never treated the supplies as more important than the patient. Our doctors often did the opposite. We worshipped data. We trusted machines because machines did not tremble, did not remember, did not look back at us with frightened violet eyes and make our training feel suddenly incomplete. Ethan checked the fluid temperature against the inside of his wrist, then against a portable reader, then against his wrist again. Dr. Merrick's noticed. "You have an instrument for that?" Ethan nodded. "I have skin too." It was not a joke. That was the problem with humans. Half of what they said sounded ridiculous until it worked. Ceralia's grip tightened around his hand when the nurse came closer with the low-stimulus blanket. The field immediately brightened, and every monitor climbed at once. The nurse stopped so quickly her shoes squeaked against the floor. Ethan did not turn. "Set it on the chair. Step back slowly." The nurse obeyed. Ceralia's breathing eased by one small degree. Ethan looked down at her. "Good call. Too many people." "I agree." Her eyes shifted to him, confused, as if no one had ever praised her for being afraid before. That was when I understood the difference. We had been trying to suppress her reactions. Ethan was translating them. To us, the field meant danger. To him, it meant no. To us, the pulse meant instability. To him, it meant do not come closer. To us, Ceralia Voss had become a medical emergency wrapped in a battlefield problem. To Ethan Walker, she was still communicating. "I am going to put the blanket over your legs," he said. "Not your arms. Nothing near your chest yet. You can keep holding my hand." Ceralia gave the smallest nod I had ever seen. It was so slight the computer did not register it. Ethan did. He moved slowly, using his free hand to lift the blanket, and place it over her lower body with the careful boredom of someone making a bed in a quiet house. The field flickered once, then dimmed. Commander Varesh whispered. She allowed that. His voice carried disbelief, but also something else. Shame, maybe? Or relief arriving too late to be clean. Ethan glanced at him. Patients usually do better when they get a choice. Merrick's opened his mouth, then closed it again. A wise decision. Ethan secured the saline line without touching the existing restraint bands, then paused before connecting it. Sorelia, I need fluids in. You are dehydrated. Probably cold too, even if your readings say otherwise. Your body has been running hard for hours. Her eyes moved toward the tube. The field trembled. Ethan waited. He did not say, "This will not hurt." He did not say, "Calm down." He said, "You can hate it. We still need to do it." That sentence should not have worked. It did. Sorelia looked back at his face. After 3 long seconds, her fingers loosened. Permission. Ethan connected the line. No surge came. No blackout warning. No equipment failure. Just fluid moving through a tube while the most advanced doctors on the station watched as if witnessing first contact. I checked the numbers and felt my throat go dry. Temperature stabilizing. Pulse 88. Defensive field down 41% from peak. Neural spikes decreasing. Pain markers still high, but no longer climbing. This is not possible, Merrick said, quieter now, less angry. Ethan adjusted the blanket edge. It is not fixed. It is just better. How are you not afraid? I asked before I could stop myself. Ethan looked up at me then, and for the first time I saw the fatigue clearly. Not weakness. Mileage. The kind of tired that came from too many rooms, too many sirens, too many people pretending they were fine because falling apart would inconvenience everyone else. I am afraid, he said. I just do not make it her problem. No one in the room answered. Even Varesh lowered his gaze. Sorelia was watching Ethan as if that sentence had reached somewhere deeper than the saline, deeper than the scans, deeper than whatever training had taught her to turn pain into silence. Her lips moved. The translator struggled, clicked, then found the words. You came closer. Ethan nodded. Yes. Her voice was rough, barely above breath. They always step away. The field dropped another 10%. Not because of medicine. Not because of technology. Because the human did not lie. He did not tell her the galaxy was kind. He did not tell her she was safe forever. He just stayed close enough for now. And somehow, for Sorelia Voss, that was the first treatment that mattered. Sorelia's first clear sentence should have made the room celebrate. Instead, it made us feel smaller. They always step away. For words, spoken by a warrior whose name had ended negotiations before they began. And somehow every person behind the glass understood that we had not been protecting her from herself as much as protecting ourselves from understanding her. Ethan did not flinch from the sentence. He did not rush to comfort her with something shiny and false. He checked the saline flow, watched the movement of her throat, and answered like the truth was not fragile. Some people step away because they do not care, he said. Some step away because they are scared. Some step away because nobody taught them what else to do. Sorelia's eyes stayed on his face. Which are you? Ethan gave a tired half-smile. Currently? The guy holding your hand so you do not launch another hospital bed into orbit. The translator handled the words badly, but the tone survived. Something changed in Sorelia's expression. Not amusement exactly. Not peace. But the edge of terror bent, just a little, under the weight of something almost human. Her pulse dropped to 82. I stared at the monitor. Dr. Merrick stared at Ethan. Commander Varesh stared at Sorelia, and the old soldier's face looked like a wall discovering it had cracks. Then the station intercom made a mistake. A routine shift announcement began to play outside the isolation wing, bright, cheerful, and completely unaware that one sentence of recorded noise could undo 10 minutes of impossible progress. Attention medical personnel, Incoming transport docked at Bay 4. Ceralia's body went rigid. The field snapped outward 3 feet in a single pulse, hard enough to knock every loose instrument from the counter. The lights flickered. The saline bag swung on its stand. One nurse cried out and backed into the door. Merrick shouted for the dampeners. Varesh reached for his sidearm out of pure battlefield instinct and stopped himself halfway, horrified by his own hand. Ethan moved faster than all of them. Not dramatically. Not like a fighter. Like a medic who had seen panic outrun reason before. He leaned closer, blocked Ceralia's view of the room with his own body, and raised his voice just enough to cut through the announcement. Ceralia. Eyes here. Her breathing broke apart. The translator caught fragments, not language, just fear trying to become words. Hull breach, voices, could not reach. Ethan tightened his grip only enough for her to feel him. You reached them. Her eyes snapped wide. No, you reached 37 people. Not all. The field surged again, but Ethan did not move away. That was the part one will never forget. Not the machines. Not the readings. Not the fact that his skin was reddening where the energy pressed against him. It was that he heard the worst thing she believed about herself and stepped closer. Not all, Ethan said. But 37 still breathe because of you. The intercom cut off as I finally killed the station feed. The room fell quiet again, except for Ceralia's ragged breathing and Ethan's steady voice. You are not on the hull. You are not alone out there. You are in a room with bad lighting, one stubborn doctor, one angry commander, one very embarrassed medical staff, and me. I should have been offended. I was too busy being grateful. Ceralia's eyes searched his face like she expected the lie to appear eventually. It did not. Humans, I was starting to understand, could be reckless with their bodies, but strangely careful with pain. Ethan did not try to erase hers. He gave it edges. He made it smaller than the whole universe. Can you feel the bed under your back? He asked. Ceralia blinked once. Yes. Can you feel the blanket? Yes. Can you feel my hand? Her fingers tightened. Yes. Good. That means you are here. The field retreated inch by inch. Not defeated. Persuaded. There was a difference, and Ethan seemed to know it instinctively. When the last pulse faded, Ceralia looked past him at Commander Varesh. Her voice was still. Thin, but it carried. Do not point weapons in my medical room. Varesh went very still. Then, slowly, the commander removed his hand from his side and bowed his head. Understood. Ethan looked at him over his shoulder. Good. Because I was about to say the same thing. No one laughed. But Ceralia's mouth moved faintly, almost a smile. And in that moment, every alien in Isolation Room 3 understood the terrifying truth. The human had not overpowered the storm. He had taught the storm how to breathe. The almost smile on Ceralia's face vanished when the main doors opened. Not the isolation door. The outer doors beyond the observation chamber. Far enough away to be safe, close enough to be stupid. 3 officers entered in formal gray command uniforms, followed by 2 legal monitors and a security aide carrying a sealed order case. I knew them before the door finished closing. Medical oversight. Military command. Risk assessment. The 3 sacred pillars of taking a fragile situation and making it worse with paperwork. Ethan felt Ceralia's fingers tighten before any monitor reacted. He did not look away from her. Still here, he said. You are doing fine, she whispered. They are not here for me. He glanced toward the glass then, just once. No. I do not think they are. The lead officer, Admiral Corvin, stepped to the observation line with the posture of a man who had never personally calmed anything more dangerous than a meeting schedule. His eyes moved over Ceralia, then Ethan, then their joined hands. His expression hardened at the sight of the human inside the isolation zone. Remove the medic, he ordered. Commander Varesh turned slowly. Admiral, that would be unwise. Unwise is allowing an unshielded foreign civilian to interfere with a fleet asset during a containment event. Asset. The word hit the room like a dropped instrument. Ceralia's pulse jumped from 80 to 94. The field brightened around the bed in a thin blue edge. Ethan's thumb shifted once over her wrist, not restraining, just reminding. Here. Now. Hand. Breath. She is a patient, Ethan said. His voice stayed level. That made the sentence more dangerous. Admiral Corvin barely looked at him. You will speak when addressed. Ethan nodded. Then address me quickly, because your asset is about 30 seconds from a panic response caused entirely by your bedside manner. I saw Dr. Merrick's flinch. Not from fear. From agreement. That frightened him more than the field had. The legal monitor opened the order case and projected a document into the air. By emergency authority, Ceralia Voss is to be transferred to a secured military recovery unit. Human involvement is suspended pending review. Ceralia's eyes moved to Ethan. Just a flicker, but he caught it. Nobody is moving you right now, he said. Admiral Corvin's voice sharpened. That is not your decision. Ethan finally turned his head enough for everyone to see his face. He did not look heroic. He looked tired again. Tired and very, very done. Actually, Admiral, it is hers. The room went cold. Not literally. The environmental system held steady at 68 degrees. But every alien present felt the temperature drop anyway. We had spent generations building command structures around warriors like Ceralia. We assigned them ranks, missions, recovery protocols, handlers, evaluations, containment categories. We decorated them in public and controlled them in private. And this human, this soft-skinned medic from a planet famous for weather disasters and poor survival odds, had just suggested the most radical medical concept in the room. Ask her. Admiral Corvin gave a short, humorless laugh. She is unstable. Ethan looked back at Ceralia. She is awake. She is compromised. She is listening. She is dangerous. Ethan's voice dropped. So is every frightened person when you treat them like equipment. No one moved. The field did. It pulsed outward, not wild this time, not uncontrolled. Measured. Warning, not panic. The bed restraints released one by one with soft mechanical clicks. I had not touched the controls. Neither had anyone else. Ceralia had done it. Her hand still held Ethan's, but now her other hand pressed against the mattress. Slowly, carefully, with more effort than any of us wanted to admit, the blade of the 7th Fleet pushed herself upright. The blanket slid to her waist. The luminous markings along her arms glowed low and steady, no longer lightning, more like banked fire. Ethan moved with her, supporting without forcing, close enough to help, careful enough not to claim credit. Admiral Corvin took one step back before he remembered his rank. Ceralia looked through the glass at him. Her voice was rough, but it carried perfectly. I am not cargo. The legal monitors froze. Commander Varesh bowed his head deeper than he had before. Dr. Merrick stared at the floor like he was seeing his own profession there, and not liking what it had become. Admiral Corvin recovered poorly. Warrior Voss, you are under medical restriction and fleet authority. Release the human and prepare for transfer. Ceralia's fingers tightened around Ethan's hand. This time, it was not fear. It was choice. No. One word. No shouting. No display. No battlefield speech. Just no. The field vanished completely. Not because she had no strength left. Because she no longer needed to keep everyone away. She had chosen who could stand close. Ethan exhaled, and only then did I realize he had been holding his own breath. Ceralia turned her head slightly toward him. Did I do that correctly? Ethan's mouth twitched. Pretty good. Very American, actually. The translator did not know what to do with that, but somehow the meaning arrived anyway. Ceralia looked back at the Admiral, still pale, still shaking, still beautiful in the terrifying way of a storm deciding to become a person again. He stays, she said. And you lower your voice in my medical room. That was the moment the hierarchy changed. Not officially. Not on paper. But everyone felt it. The fleet had sent a human medic to stabilize their greatest warrior. Instead, he reminded her that she was allowed to choose. And once Aurelia Voss remembered that, there was not a command order in the galaxy strong enough to touch her. Admiral Corvin did not leave immediately. Men like him never do. They stand in doorways and wait for reality to apologize. But reality had chosen a side, and it was sitting upright on a trauma bed, holding a human medic's hand while every monitor in the room reported the same impossible truth. Aurelia Voss was stabilizing. Not because we overpowered her nervous system. Not because we restrained her better. Not because the fleet issued an order in a louder voice. She was stabilizing because Ethan Walker had done what none of us thought to do. He treated the most dangerous woman in the 7th Fleet like a person who had the right to be afraid. The legal monitors lowered their projection. Commander Varesh stepped between the Admiral and the glass with the slow finality of a blast door closing. Medical authority remains with attending staff, he said. Corvin's eyes narrowed. You are overruling command? Varesh looked through the glass at Aurelia, then at Ethan, then back to the Admiral. I am recognizing success. That sentence traveled through the room like a signal flare. Dr. Merrick said nothing, but his silence had changed shape. Before it had been resistance. Now it was surrender with a medical license. He checked the display beside him, swallowed once, and spoke without looking at Corvin. Patient pulse is 76. Defensive field inactive. Respiration stable. Pain markers reduced by 52%. Removing the human medic at this stage would be medically indefensible. I almost dropped my tablet. Merrick's agreeing with Ethan was not a note for the chart. It was an astronomical event. Ethan, naturally, ruined the grandeur by asking, Can somebody get her water? Aurelia looked at him with faint confusion. Water? Yes, he said. Old human trick. We try not to let patients dry out while politicians argue nearby. The translator rendered the sentence cleanly. One of the nurses made a small sound into her glove. It might have been laughter. This time, no one punished it. I brought the water myself, in a soft spout medical cup designed for recovering patients with limited grip. Ethan took it, showed Aurelia how to hold it, and waited while she drank. Such a simple act. No glowing technology. No heroic music. No ceremonial oath. Just a cup of water and a man patient enough to let a legend sip slowly. Admiral Corvin watched this with visible discomfort. I think that frightened him more than her field. A weapon can be aimed. A soldier can be ordered. A symbol can be used. But a person who has remembered she is a person becomes much harder to control. Aurelia finished half the cup, then looked through the glass. I will remain under medical care, she said. Corvin straightened, seizing the words as if they belonged to him. Good. Then the transfer can proceed. No, Aurelia said. Her voice was stronger now. Still quiet, but no longer fragile. I will remain here. Her eyes moved to Ethan. With my medic. My medic. 2 words, and the room shifted again. Ethan blinked once, clearly not prepared for ownership of any kind before finishing his coffee. Technically, I am assigned to the station emergency rotation. Aurelia looked at him. Are you refusing? No. Just clarifying before someone gives me a cape. The translator hesitated on cape, gave up, and delivered the concept as ceremonial shoulder fabric. Aurelia considered that with grave seriousness. You would look strange in ceremonial shoulder fabric. Ethan nodded. That is what I keep telling people. The almost smile returned to her face, clearer this time. Small, exhausted, but real. And there it was, the second miracle. Not that she lived. Not that her field vanished. Not that command backed down. The miracle was that Aurelia Voss, who had woken surrounded by alarms and fear, had enough room inside herself to find humor again. Corvin left after that, Because there are only so many times authority can be told no before the walls begin to notice. The legal monitors followed. The security aide hesitated at the door, glanced once at Ethan, and then lowered his eyes before stepping out. When the outer doors sealed, the medical wing exhaled. Varesh remained. He approached the glass and placed one armored hand against it, not touching the barrier control, not requesting entry, just offering presence from a respectful distance. "Warrior Voss," he said. "I failed to see you clearly." Cerelia watched him for a long moment. "You saw what they trained you to see." Varesh bowed his head. "That is not an excuse." "No," she said. "But it is a start." Ethan adjusted the blanket around her without making a performance of it. She allowed it. That quiet permission meant more than any military citation hanging in the Hall of Victories. I looked down at my tablet and saw the final warning status disappear from the screen. Isolation Room 3 was no longer classified as a containment risk. It had returned to standard medical observation. Standard. The word felt absurd. Nothing about that room would ever be standard again. Before that day, we believed humans were durable because they came from a harsh planet, because their bones healed stubbornly, because their hearts kept working under conditions that made our textbooks uncomfortable.